Hi everyone, I'm Stephen and welcome to Audio Nautica. And today in this third video of my audio journey, we're going to look at these Polk Audio RT10 power speakers. This series of videos, my audio journey, is precisely that. It's to share with you my 30-year journey of audio and what has interested me most in audio. And it started out probably in the early 1990s, and my interest back then was not really in hi-fi, but was in television or movies. So really the first piece of gear that I bought was a Sony hi-fi stereo VCR. I still remember the model number. It was an SLV X810AS. I paid $1,000 for it. I bought it in 1993. And that was basically so I could watch the stuff that I wanted to watch on telly and movies on VHS in stereo. And incidentally, those machines, if you come across one on eBay, they seem to be getting a little bit collectible. But then I remember one day walking into Brash's at Carindale Shopping Centre in Brisbane, and Brash's was kind of like a big box store that sold hi-fi, VCR, TV, that kind of gear. And they had a setup there, and it had Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, playing on Laserdisc through what we would call a home theatre system, 5.1. It was Dolby Pro Logic. Dolby Digital had not come out in the home setting then. So I saw this thing and I thought it was absolutely amazing. So this would have been probably about 1994, 95 at the absolute latest. So that's what set me on this current journey, but back then it was a journey towards home theatre. So that's what resulted in buying the first two sets of speakers that I've already shown you in this series. And what I really coveted for, I suppose, was, this was the final part, was the fronts. I think by the time I got these fronts, I'm pretty sure that I did have the receiver. I can't remember the model number. It was a Sound Research. It was a fairly nice receiver. It was Pro Logic, but I have not had it for a very long time. So I bought these speakers, these RT10s, in 1997. I paid $1,250 for them. So that means that for the 25 years that I've had these, it's cost me $50 a year. I think that's pretty good value for money. And as I've said before, I always think if you're going to buy a new set of speakers, buy absolutely the best ones that you can afford to buy. So I've got I've still got the original manual that came with it, and I've still got the original glossy sales brochure that the sales guy showed to me in the store, which kind of really does show its age now. You see this visioning of a home theatre system of the 1990s, but that's what everyone wanted back then. And you look at these gorgeous, probably RT16s or RT20s that Mr. Polk is standing next to there. I think that's what everyone really wanted to have, but couldn't necessarily afford it. So the glossy brochure, and there's all the models, and there's the RT10s, which are the ones that I ended up buying. 89.5 dB efficiency, so that's pretty good efficiency, 150 watts per channel, 8 ohms, minus 3 dB limits, 45 hertz to 23 kilohertz. So they perform pretty well. And as you can see, I still have these speakers, but these have not been the main speakers in my home theatre for quite some time. And that's basically because I came across another set of speakers that on paper, these should have outperformed, but I just fell in love with the other set of speakers. And that other set of speakers currently still are my main speakers on my home theatre. I'm going to do another video of those in a later My Audio Journey video. But these RT10s, even though they've sat in a box not doing a lot for probably about 15 years, they were just too good for me to get rid of. And currently I use these as the speakers on my virtual pipe organ. So these currently are in use now, which is good, rather than having them sit around. So let's dive in and tear these things down and see what I think and see what you think about the quality of these things after we've done that. Okay, so we're going to start by pulling out this woofer first. It is a 6.5 inch driver. I have had this woofer out various times, which I'll explain why in just a moment once I get this out. The build of this thing, I guess, looks fairly typical for mid-1990s kind of design, MDF cabinet, stick on vinyl finish. The vinyl peels around the bottom. This has a downward firing port, so port points straight down, and then the foot is kind of like the flare, if you like, for the port. So let's just get this driver out. Okay. So the white wire goes to the black mark. All right, here we are. So date of assembly, January 11, 1996, Polk Audio MW8002. It's not a bad looking driver. But it's certainly not up there with, your JBL kind of drivers, but you wouldn't expect it to be for the kind of money that I paid for this thing. And, this has not been touched since 1997 when I bought this, so can't complain. Looks like the flange has kind of not been in the right position when I put that back in there once, but that's all right. So one of the things that I had to do to this unit was the stuffing had all disintegrated. So basically there was like a grey powder falling out of the bottom of the speaker from the stuffing that had disintegrated. So I replaced it with some of this stuff here. Let's just take this tweeter out. Just point you guys up a bit so you can see, that's better. We'll just take this tweeter out now. SL 5001. And again, I guess it looks like a fairly sort of a typical tweeter, nothing special, nothing really too special about it. But that's the tweeter. You can see the MDF looks like it's a reasonable sort of quality. I noted on when I did the centre speaker teardown that the MDF on it looked like it was pretty cheap and nasty. So this does look like it's a fair bit more solid than what the case on that CS250S centre speaker is. Just as I whack these last two screws back in, just a reminder too that if you want to support my channel, you can do that on Patreon. I'm so thankful to my Patreons for supporting my work in producing this kind of content. I'm also on Instagram. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do. It is really telling from the statistics. Most people who watch my channel are not subscribed, or either they are subscribed but they're watching it not signed in to their YouTube account. I can't tell you how much of a difference it makes to my channel for you to be subscribed, because that's what feeds a YouTube algorithm. So I'm just going to do a bit of digging to find out where the crossover is, and I'll come right back. Okay guys, so I can tell that the crossover is mounted to the back of these input jacks. So we're just going to have to pull this out, and there actually is a circuit board, but there isn't very much on it, and it's actually covered in pieces of disintegrated foam from the original foam that was in there. So I'm going to have to deal with that, and I'm sure the other speaker will be the same. Yeah, see all this grey stuff? Yeah, yuck. That's the remnants of, yeah, that's what it turned into. Awful. And there's a sticker on here, it says assembled in Mexico. Oh, yuck, that's just awful, dear me. If I'd have known it was like this, I would have cleaned this years ago. I mean, it seems to work okay, but I'm sure it'll be a lot happier without it. Gosh, that's just horrid. So yeah, this needs a really good clean up. So let me do that and I'll come back to you. Okay guys, I just want to show you something. Look at the right hand side of the board. I've cleaned that up now. Compare that to the left hand side of the board. All of these marks, all of this gunk, it's flux. So I talked about in my last video about how it's always good practice to clean up flux. This is why. It isn't just the kind of flux that would have gone all crusty or attracting rubbish to it. So who knows what's going on there 25 years later on. I mentioned also in my previous video that it's not uncommon for stuff to come out of factories where the boards haven't even been cleaned, and this one had never been cleaned. I'm sure when I pull it out of the other speaker it'll be the same. And the reason it's not done is simple: money. It costs money to do that, to pay someone to clean the board. So it's really pretty clear from looking at the way that this speaker has been built that it's been built to a price. It's been built to involve as little labour as possible. And so these boards have been thrown together in Mexico, and the flux not even cleaned off them to get them made as cheap as possible. So I'll keep on cleaning this up and I'll come back when I've finished cleaning it. But do I think these speakers were ever worth $600 each? Probably not. Doesn't mean they're bad speakers, no. I think they're probably pretty typical of what was around at the time, but it just shows you what kind of goes on inside when things are built to a price. This was certainly not a low-end speaker. You could get something an awful lot cheaper and nastier than this, but it's interesting to see what you find when you look inside. So I'll get this cleaned up and I'll come back. Okay, this board is being cleaned up now. I actually pulled out this bipolar electrolytic capacitor and checked it, and it's fine. And yeah, quite amazing actually. This board is now cleaner than it has ever been since the day that this thing was built. So that's that. So I think that's pretty much about all there is to see on these speakers now. I'm going to pull the other crossover out and clean it up, and I won't bore you with that. But yeah, this gives you an idea as to what's inside of these things. I don't think you'd go hunting a pair of these as vintage speakers, but hey, if you had some poor teenager who was wanting something to start with that was free, I mean, you could do plenty worse than these. So, you know, they're very typical of the era, you know, mid-90s, late 90s kind of home theatre tower speakers. As you can see, they really are built to a price, but they've served me well. I still have them. I intend to keep them. They work well in my application. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed my video. Please give me a like if you did, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye for now.